Are you a bass beginner and do you feel like you're struggling with your bass progress? Well, use these 5 tips and you might get yourself a lot further than you think you would have. And number 5 is to do with this hand. It's often the one that's forgotten about, and you might be struggling with bad bass tone essentially, and you might be picking and plucking the strings and doing all sorts of things that don't make a nice bass sound. But I want you to think, don't pluck the string, press the string. If you press the string with your finger, it will get a much nicer sound, and you'll find you won't be hurting your fingers as much. Now, you're still going to build up a chalice, and you will get times where you get blisters on your fingers. That is just a natural thing, but it does show a sign of progression, and you've really put some effort into it to get a blister, so well done essentially. But if you think press the string, not pluck the string, you can go a lot further with your bass tone. It's like a little man that walks along the strings, and just press the string, don't pluck or pull the string. Make sure you're pressing it down like this, and press your fingers into your thumb, not too hard, they're only touching lightly like this. Probably use less force than you think you need, and just like cover your hand up with this and just try and just get some strokes like that. You should sort of hear perhaps a clicking noise like you would if you click your fingers together when your pinkies, not your pinkies, your fingers hit your thumb. You won't hear it every time, and it's not as loud as a click with that, but that does show you're getting that right contact there. And if you're pressing the strings, you're going to go a lot further than if you're plucking them. Next up is also again something else to do with this hand, and it's keeping your thumb on strings above where you're playing. So essentially the lower strings, if you're playing higher up, keeping your thumb on those strings to mute them. And while yes, you can mute with your hand, and you often mute with your hand if you're playing lower, you mute the higher strings with your hand, but we'll get onto that in a second. And I will talk about it in this step as well, because this is just muting in general, and it is a thing that a lot of beginners suffer with, where they're playing strings and then other strings ring out that they don't want to ring out. Essentially, with this hand, your thumb is going to be the muting aid when you're on the higher strings, and when you're on the lower strings, your fingers are obviously there, and they're the strings that you want to play anyway, and this hand is going to be resting on those strings higher up. But let's talk about this thumb first. Essentially, if I'm playing on the E string, my thumb is on the pickup. Please ground your thumb. That is another beginner issue. If you're not grounding your thumb on a pickup or a string, and you're just leaving it hanging somewhere, don't do that. Put it on a pickup, sort of rest it up like this, as you can see my thumb here, and then on the E string, I'll have it on the pickup. If I'm playing the A string, my thumb moves down onto the E string. If I'm playing the A string, or if I'm playing the D or G strings, I don't often go up to the D string to play the G string, but if I'm playing the D or G strings, my thumb will be on the A string. And I've got these 3 positions: on the pickup for when I'm playing E, on the E string for when I'm playing A or D sometimes, but often if I'm playing D or G, my thumb will be on the A string. There's not really a need to go any higher, because you can reach over with your fingers, but move your thumb while you're doing this. And if you learn it, it should come naturally. But I will say, when I'm on the A string, my thumb is still resting on the E string here. It's resting on the side like this. So the E string is muted as well, although I don't have my thumb on it. When your thumb's obviously on it, it mutes it anyway, it can't ring out. But if your thumb isn't on it, rest the side of it on. You should still feel it's a natural and comfortable feeling. Then with this hand, essentially, you sort of just have to like put the little fleshy part of your finger over the strings, like sort of keep your fingers quite flat. Like I do obviously arch them slightly, but by the time you get to the end of the arch, and you can even just use one finger for this, you can use your pinky, that's the main one that's great for muting, because obviously it's the closest this way, and it'll be the one that's doing most of the work when it comes to muting. But just to have a little bit of your skin on those lower strings there when you're playing some of these, on the higher strings, sorry, when you're playing the lower strings, does go a long way for eliminating a lot of the, ringing out of those strings. Although it tends to be the lower strings which are the issue, which is why I covered that thumb first. Next up is just bad hand position on the fretboards. So my tip for you, take your hand out, wiggle your fingers around, sort of make an arch shape with your fingers, but make your thumb pretty flat, and put it on the bass. You should be able to get a 3-fret span pretty easily without having to feel a stretch going first finger, third finger, and pinky. You can do it with your third as well, that's fine, but you know, use your pinky. But you know, if you can do that hand position, then you've got reasonably good hand position. And if your wrist is feeling comfortable and not aching, and it's not like an obscene angle like this, and your hands aren't doing all sorts of weird things, if you can rest your hand on the bass like this and not have all sorts of weird tensions, then you're doing great for your hand positions. Now, next up, I've already alluded to it, and it is use your pinky. The sooner you can use your pinky, the much more dexterous you will be with the bass. And also, if you're struggling with reach issues, if you start using your pinky, you will struggle with those reach issues a lot less than previously. So please do use your pinky, because then you can span way more of the fretboard when need be. I can even do 5 frets here from 1st fret to 5th fret. I do have to change my hand position slightly. 4 isn't really a stretch, but 5 definitely is, and 6 obviously just isn't going to happen. But you know, I've got weird monster hands when it comes to that. But if I wasn't using my pinky, 4 is a stretch really, and 3 is about where I'd want it. So you can get an extra fret of range really by using your pinky. So please do use your pinky, and you know, if you're not, please start using it. It will feel weird at first, I know, because it's not a very strong finger initially, but once you get used to it, it will be much strong enough and you'll have no problems with it, and you'll use it like second nature. And this last one isn't really a technique thing, it's just a choice on what you're playing, and it's don't learn all of those scales and exercises instead of learning tunes. Now, as a beginner bass player, you'll probably be given all these scales and exercises and fingering charts to learn. And while learning your fingering charts and learning your fretboard is great, and as a beginner, you should be learning your fingerboard. It's a great thing which you should do, and it's sort of an omission from this list, but I will link my video on how to learn the fretboard if you do want to do that. Please do it as a beginner as well. Works as a great honorable mention here. But getting back to the matter at hand, if you do not learn tunes, you won't really be able to play with other people, because no one wants you to play loads of scales, and you'll enjoy the process of playing a lot more if you play tunes that you like rather than all these scales. Learning all the scales and stuff is very useful, and it's great in the theory side of things, but when you're a beginner, it is great to have a tune done quickly, and it makes you feel good about your bass playing, and then it makes you feel good about what you're playing and makes you want to continue. And often, if you start learning tunes, then you're going to have a much more enjoyable time playing the bass than if you just start learning all of these scales. Incorporate some of that into your playing, but if you're not learning tunes, then you're really doing yourself a disservice, so please do start doing that. But anyway, that's it for today's video. I hope that you have enjoyed, and if you're a beginner, now you've got 5 things to start doing if you're not doing already. 6 if you count learning the fretboard, because that is another very, very important one. So that's it for today's video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!